facts. Let's set morality, let's set faith, let's set all of those things aside and just look at the facts as to what makes a healthier country, what makes a more prosperous country. And look at it just from as cold as we can with the green eye shade of an accountant as to what's best for our country. And what's clearly best for our country is having families with moms and dads, an economic unit that is a much more successful economic unit, a unit, a parent, mom, and a dad that is much better for raising and nurturing children in healthier, wealthier, better educated, better outcomes with respect to a whole host of issues. So why can't we, as in a political movement, talk about what we can do to strengthen the family? Why can't we go out and say that there are things that we can do in our country to be able to encourage this type of family formation? Why do? Now, is it a lot of government policy? Well, some government policy. One of the things I propose that actually has been criticized by conservatives is increasing the child deduction. How many families don't form, or when they do form, don't have children because it's just too expensive? Because the government takes too much? You're having to work a couple of jobs because of the tax burden or the regulatory burden that's been put on you, and so it's hard? And so why not do what we did back in the 1950s and 60s, when the tax deduction for children was enormous to almost most families who raising children paid very little to no federal income tax. Now that's not the case. They're paying a substantial amount more. And as a result, that second parent has to go out and work to be able to make ends meet, has to have much more financial strain. And of course, what is one of the #1 reasons that marriages fail or don't form in the first place? It's financial. So if we want to encourage healthy relationships, let's do some things in our tax code. Let's do some things in our country to reward and keep and help in every way we can build families and help keep those families together. It is far cheaper. And let's look at the keys to success in America. Talk about this in all of my speeches, how we know what will make someone successful in America. We all know it instinctively, but believe it or not, a liberal think tank went out a few years ago and quantified it. They quantified what we all know, because it's what we've all been taught as to how to succeed in America. And what is it? Number one, the best way to avoid poverty is work. Now, that's not what President Obama believes. He believes the best way to avoid poverty is to be on Medicaid and food stamps and a whole host of other programs. Because he's doing his best to destroy this economy, to create jobs, and make more people dependent so they can stay out of poverty by being on the government dole and dependent upon him, and therefore a very reliable vote come election time.
Yeah.
But we know that work works. We know that if you work, you're almost guaranteed to get out of poverty, but there's two other things that you do, that we need to do. Number one, work. Number two, graduate from high school. We have over 1 million kids a year dropping out of school. Over 1 million. We have graduation rates in some of our biggest cities of 40%, 50%. That means half of our children are going to be lost. Half of our children are not going to do one of those three things that get you success in America, which means they will not be successful in most cases, which means we are dooming them to a life on the margin, and we are costing all of us and the rest of society a bunch of money to be able to help and support them as they struggle in society economically. And not just struggle economically, but other ways. The third thing you need to do is to get married before you have children. big advocate for, doing healthy marriage, healthy fatherhood programs, all sorts of programs, believe it or not, yes, to encourage and have faith-based institutions and others take part of that in encouraging healthy behavior, particularly toward young at-risk kids. Well, I was talking to Elaine Bennett, who is the Bill Bennett, the Book of Virtues, Bill Bennett. Yeah, you can give Bill Bennett. I was on his radio show this morning, and his wife, Elaine Bennett, told me that she has one of these healthy marriage grants, and she talks to, I think it's 13, 14, 15-year-olds, trying to get them to engage and understand the value of marriage and the importance of that and how to aim toward that in a culture that is increasingly de-emphasizing marriage, trying to neutralize marriage as, well, pretty much anything you want it to be. We've already devalued it with our divorce laws, and now it's easier in many states to get a divorce than it is to make a contract for, doing an improvement on your home. Well, what happened in her program is she's out there trying to encourage these young girls and young boys to engage in healthy behavior and to model them and aim them towards something that is an intrinsic good, that will keep them out of poverty, that will create a better, stable, and home environment for them. The Obama administration just recently handed down regulations that says they cannot preach or talk about abstinence. And they cannot say that getting involved in premarital sexual activity is an at-risk behavior. Now, what is this president doing? He is deliberately misinforming the most vulnerable people in our society and targeting them toward a life that has less economic potential. Why would a president do that? Why would a government deliberately go out and have programs designed to help people stay away and to target themselves toward healthy behavior and not give them the tools that are necessary? You may have your own, maybe it's because the president wants people to be in poverty. Maybe it's because he is so wedded to this secular ideology that he just can't get by. I don't know, but the question is, why? And you as Americans should ask that question. Why, Mr. President? The most vulnerable teens that you're not giving the tools that they desperately need from a culture that says, do all this bad stuff, do all this stuff that we know is going to cause harm to you in the long term, and one small voice that says, no, let me tell you something different. And he crushes it. What kind of president does that? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most important election of your lifetime.
Yes.
We can talk about a whole host of issues. We can talk about the state of the economy and where we are. And yes, we need strong families. We also need an atmosphere in which the economy can grow. I was very excited at the president's speech last night. I actually was. Because the President of the United States made the case for Rick Santorum for being the nominee of the Republican Party. I
gave him that. You know that? He used it.
What did the president lead with? Now remember, we all know this was a purely political speech. This was a speech designed to go out and after different voter groups that he thinks are key for him to win the election. We all agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay, what was the first voter group he went after? The one he spent the most time on? The one that he was going to do the most to try to help?
Workers.
Manufacturers.
Manufacturers.
Oh, yeah.
Blue-collar workers.
Yeah.
Well, who's been running their campaign for president here on the Republican side of the aisle saying, we need to focus on upward mobility. We need to focus on small town and blue-collar America to create the ladder of success through manufacturing jobs to be able to rise in society again.
Rick Santorum.
Whose plan was called by the Wall Street Journal supply-side economics for the working men?
Rick Santorum.
Barack Obama knows the key to this election are the swing states, in particular in the industrial heartland of our country. The Reagan Democrats, those blue-collar Democrats who swung for Reagan and provided a 49-state victory. Those are the folks who are being disaffected by policies that are crushing the manufacturing and processing sector of the economy through regulation and taxation, through environmental policy that is destroying the ability to make things in this country, to produce energy, to keep those energy prices down. He knows his policies are destroying and making it difficult for those folks to get employment. And he knows that they're the ones who are on the bubble as to what direction they're going to swing. He also knows that these folks, for the most part, don't agree with him on some of the core values issues. I come from southwestern Pennsylvania. I grew up in... Any Steeler fans in here?
Oh, no.
Steeler Nation? Anyway, oh, come on now.
Browns. Cleveland Browns.
But I come from southwestern Pennsylvania. I'm the grandson of a coal miner. I grew up in a steel town, as Chris talked about earlier. I lived on a VA post in an apartment, public housing. It was a great place to grow up. I grew up with veterans, grew up with folks who worked in the mills. This is my heritage. This is where I come from. This is who I am, and I'm very, very proud of it. Well, I can tell you, he knows that, well, you heard it when he gave this speech in San Francisco 4 years ago. You may remember it. It was in one of those private meetings where there was supposed to be no audio equipment and no cameras, and someone recorded. This was right before the Pennsylvania primary. And what did he say? He said he's worried about losing Pennsylvania because of all those people who cling to their guns and their Bibles. Thank God we do. Thank you. We cling to those guns to protect our rights, and we cling to our Bibles to remind us where those rights come from. He's out of touch with their values, but his party has always been one that has economically tried to orient themselves and try to be for the working guy. Not anymore. He's for the Wall Street guys. He's for the big bailouts. He's for Dodd-Frank that's going to keep those big banks going. He's for Wall Street. He's for the radical environmentalists who have shut down now the Keystone Pipeline that would create a lot of blue-collar jobs in this country. He is... He's doing everything through the Environmental Protection Agency and a whole host